Okay, so here we are playing, or ready to start Chosin. And in a cranky ass mood is. First thing we start off with is the offensive ranged fire phase, which means we check the weather. Yeah. I'm not thrilled with the decisions there. That's up here. Single die. It's nice weather. And we have that marked here. Lovely. Probably only like 10 below zero. That would be nice. It is night though. Won't have to worry about replacements here. Okay, now with the Chinese, I have the option to start digging in. There's a question of what my strategy here is. I don't think I want to dig in any of the places I'm at right now. What I'm looking at is the possibility maybe of cutting the supply roads and trying to dig in near or along them to provide me with some help. So I don't think I'm going to be doing any kind of digging in at this point. Then I get to start firing, and for this I'm going to have to paw through all the pieces that the Chinese have and see if they want to do any pre-fire anywhere. And there's not a lot that they have that's allowed to. Is that? I don't know if they have anything. Everything looks like it's, well, it all has ranged fire. But it's not very far range. So we're looking at 1 hex across the board. Here's a 2 hexer. So I don't think I'm going to have any ranged fire at this point. Oh, I got a big old artillery here. 1, 2. And that's part of this division up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's not going to help me much. So we're not going to see that. Which means I get to move. Now, remember because it's night, moving adjacent may not hurt. And night gives me some other advantages, which if I move the map, I can look at the rolls. And yes, I'm tremendously cranky. So let's get a shift. Yeah, I don't think I get any actual tactical advantage from attacking at night, but I don't get a disadvantage. So, well, I'll start moving my pieces, but I don't have a strategy as yet, so it may take a little bit of time to try to devise one. Like I said, I kind of like the idea of trying to create road problems on the road before I actually launch attacks, but I've got some reason to create pressure on the Allied forces early, which may mean that I'm under too much pressure and have to charge up and start shooting right away. I largely pushed myself forward. These guys, I don't think I moved yet. I'm scared this is a big stack, though. God damn it. Can't operate with one hand. Okay, well. It's not that big a stack. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 16. It's not that much bigger than some of the infantry. If I, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I attack from these hexes, I get to add his firepower in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's make a quick roll. This is to check to see if I get a move marker, and I do not, so this is kind of a surprise attack. All that really means, it's not really a surprise attack. All it means is I don't get the bonus on the defensive fire phase. And speaking of which, that's where we are right now. We're going to be on the defensive ranged fire phase, and here I've got to go through every little bit and try to blast things back. And you know, it's not like it's mechanically that painful a process, but when you're learning a new game, when I'm learning a new game, I want to work a little bit more slowly through the process. I need a break. But you can see I made the decision to just swarm in and attack. I think I've got not enough time to try to, you know, create some kind of solid roadblock. Now, both here and here, though, if I can kind of solidify my positions, I can build that roadblock so that if I'm putting sufficient pressure on the UN forces, they might have to work their way back and fight their way out through the roads. Over here, I've decided not to launch, what is this, the 58th Division, I guess, of the Chinese. They were set up to kind of attack this. Instead, I've swung around here to Hudongni, and I'm also pushing the remainder of that division around the flank, simply because I don't think attacking the main force here is going to be terribly effective. Now, I could be completely wrong. It's hard to tell what I'm facing unless I paw through the units. But there aren't a lot of these 12s in there, and there are a lot of them up in the Marine camp, and these guys in the Army have 9s. So, you know, which way is more reasonable? I'd get 10 points if I overrun this completely, even if I get driven out of it. But still, it didn't look possible for me to attack all 3 with any kind of force, whereas blocking the roads seems like a valuable task. I've tried where I can to throw the Chinese headquarters into play so that they can provide additional fire support. You look at their counter and you say, wait, you got a range of 1, you're not giving anything. No, but he gives it his additional fire value to every unit of his division that is within 5 hexes of him that fires. And that doesn't seem to have anything to do with line of sight or anything else, really. This may not be the order I'll do things in general, but I'm going to take my opportunity fire at this point, or not opportunity, my defensive fire at this point. Now, I had the opportunity to do opportunity fire that I chose not to do, and I'm going to leave that alone. So I'm not quite sure about the ammo risks here. But I think that would not have cost me unless it was from artillery. Which may have been a mistake. But we'll allow this for now. So now, the first guy I'm going to go with is down here. Then I'm going to go up here where there's a cluster. Then I'll continue through the rest, but I'll probably not be on camera for them because I think this is going to be kind of a tedious process. I think I can handle this little clump, though. I don't know. So this is easy. I got 15 points of fire. I got a +2 against these guys. I'm going to combine my 15 with the +2 defensive fire modifier for this. Now, had I not done this, and I can look up who gets screwed by opportunity fire and who doesn't, you know, this is again something. So artillery and mortar would be flipped. So these guys could have done an opportunity fire without being flipped, but they're going to be doing normal fire, and they're going to get the fired marker to indicate that they can't fire again, not that they're going to have another opportunity to do so. And let's see what we get here. 4, 5, 6, we get a miss. Now I would have been able to fire again at each of these units. I'm going to pass on it simply because it's easier to cope with. But there should have been more defensive fire. Now here, we get things more complicated. Now there are things that can only fire not at range 1, and I gotta find them in here. 76, 105, and 155 millimeter artillery. Maybe that's all the artillery? I don't know. You'd think it would just say artillery if that's the case. So now, here we get to the chart optimization world. And this is kind of tricky. So if I combine these two at 18 for the +2, and it kind of sucks that the fired markers don't go on things during opportunity fire. So that would have been 6 there. Now I mark these guys with fired markers. And so far I'm just not getting much in there. Now, other guys back here may have the opportunity, like these guys had an opportunity to fire into these hexes, maybe. And there's trenches there, which would have been a -2. Okay. I mean, this is really no worse than dealing with TSS or the Brigade series, except that it's new. I got to get used to these new tables, you know? And of course, we've got more random ranges and firing opportunities that are not really, you know, as cleanly shown. So here I've got 15, 18, 27 I could drop on this, maybe more. 27 gets me there. And here I've got another dozen. Alright, I'm going to go with the 27 against these guys. Maybe that's not really 27. Let's recount. 9, 18, 24, not quite 27. 24 is a really shitty number. I got no idea what I'm doing, so I'll just throw in the rest there at 31 plus. Really, the only way I learn these charts, I mean, I can zone out on them, but the only way I really learn them is by rolling against them. So I'm going to be over here with +2, and that gets me an 11. I'm going to do 3 steps of damage. Now, I think that's chosen by the person taking the fire. I could have gone to ground. I don't want to do that because I'm in the midst of an assault here. So I don't quickly see how distributing losses as the owning player wishes, but see 11.25. And yes, I'm too cranky to be learning new games. No unit can get more than 1 step loss in a single... Why is it sending me here? It's got nothing to do with it. Okay, so 3 step losses against these guys. Well, 1... 2, 3... And I'm not sure where this is supposed to go. I don't know if it goes over here in the 89th Division to be rebuilt, or if it doesn't have that happen until the unit's actually removed from the board. My guesstimate is that these are recoveries for the cadres. That's what I had decided to interpret those rules as. That's not how they're worded, though. This unit's not destroyed yet, so it should be removed from the map, and I'm not sure what unit, when destroyed, goes into that box. It's very hard to understand what the rules might say from a purely semantic examination. However, I think the intention is what I just did, which is that this unit can come back by expending cadres somehow. I don't quite remember how. Now I'll move on to the rest of the combats, and of course, you know, I should have bloody well done the opportunity fire, but, well, the UN forces were completely surprised, I guess. what I've been forgetting to do. I've been forgetting to watch for low ammo results. Anytime those are the same number, anytime I roll doubles, I've got a low ammo result. Good luck catching that until I get really used to it. And there aren't enough fired approach markers to handle the initial attack, so I'm just using a single fire there, and then I'm handling this one. Then I'll pull it out, put a single one there. I should probably have one here because I think I resolved this, and then work my way across just to show you. It doesn't really matter. One of the problems though with some of the counters flipping over and most of them having little fired markers, it's really an irritating system to try to learn. I'm sure eventually one gets used to it, but to learn the mechanical aspects. Also, calculating fire point values, man. When you got big stacks of units like these stacks aren't firing because, you know, I fired a couple of units here and then I had this big stack to unload on these guys. And so I'm losing a lot of firing opportunities. Again, that might improve with enough playing, but I don't remember having that kind of trouble with, say, TSS. Constant stack falls and such. Now, this system's becoming, or this particular game, but probably the system as a whole, too annoying for my taste already. You know, I have a high tolerance for mechanical complexity, but not for big stacks of units that I have to count and launch lots of fire combats about. This is actually something I'm worried about for some of the OCS games, in particular Blitzkrieg Legend, that there's going to be too much firepower going on in the game, too much having to be aware of big clumps of pieces that can all, you know, intervene with each other in too many ways. I may find that less than satisfying. I'm hoping I don't, because I do like the OCS system overall. But I could see where it degenerates into something not far from how this is playing. And then, of course, without having ever played TCS, I have no idea. I've got a few of them. Keep buying them. Like Manticow down there. Without having tested out, am I going to hate these? Well, we'll see. Okay, so without going to ground anywhere, see some units got pretty chewed up. Those are the replacement full battalions, whatever. Here. You can see especially over here we got, you know, some cadres there. Here I did roll. Don't look like I did anything. I just got a miss, I guess. Yeah, looks like something got hit. Alright. Now we're on to the assaults. And remember, I don't have to actually make these. So again, this is going to be a situation of optimization all over the place as to points. So 54 to 12 seems good. And I've figured this out. It's like 4 to 1. There's no terrain here. Sometimes it's hard to see the terrain, although I am upslope. I'm trying to remember if that had some... I think being downslope would suck. And now we just roll on the regular chart here and see what our result is. 1, the attacker takes 2, the defender takes 1 step. Well, the defender step's going to be easy. The attacker steps, I'll take my 2. Again, off 1 unit. I don't know if I'm doing the wise thing here, but I can't really judge. And we'll continue with this little clump, and then again, I'll go back to pulling aside because there's not much interest in fighting a battle like this. Die roll by die roll. So here I was going to throw all 3 of these into here. So that's 54, 70, 81 to 12. That's going to put me at the 5 to 1 column. But there is defensive terrain here. Which means I get a shift to the left. So I'm only at 4 to 1 again. Which we saw wasn't terribly good on a roll of 1. Attacker takes 2, defender takes 1. I'll spread. Well, I'll take both on this unit again. running out of these little damaged units. And I'm probably never going to use these hidden things. They sound like too much of a pain in the ass. Even in opposed play, they sound like they'd be painful. Here I've got 54 against 12. I'm sorry, against 8. 54 against 8. That sounds like 6 to 1. I'm just going to do it as is. I don't think there's a terrain bonus there. 6. The defender takes 2 steps. Okay. Now these are just platoons, and I think they only have 1 step each. But I'm going to have to look that sucker up. Yeah, I'm not bothering looking it up. They have that on the fired side. Now they're going to show up, I think, in the Yadam knee wounded box. If I'm wrong about that, I'll have to fix it later, I guess. That destruction means that I can continue advancing. Do I want to continue advancing? I think the answer is yes, because I want to eat up these units. I don't want to, continuously be slamming into them. And I think being there will be helpful. We'll see if that's too aggressive. We're really kind of learning the system here completely. And here I have 33 to 12. That's unfortunately only 2 to 1. But I get a nice 6, which is a defender takes a hit. And that goes here. No, I don't think cadres get left behind in that case. Okay. Well, again, I've moved through 1, and I'll move my way across the board through all the other combat. Note, because I haven't showed it, these 2 stacks attacked this one, ignoring this one. I don't have to make attacks, and I just wanted to point that out because the odds were kind of lousy otherwise. Terrain is causing me trouble here. Now, if I can... I just attacked this hex here. That turns out it was a higher terrain than what I was in, I think. Yeah, there's this little hill up here that was completely obscured. So I rolled the dice. It looked like it was a step loss. I tried to flip the unit and noticed, oh no, I got to go on a different chart. So you're constantly, if you're me, because you can't see the terrain underneath the pieces in this game, and that happens in other games too. I had that with Unconditional Surrender as well. You find yourself constantly changing the chart and not having known how bad an attack you were making. That's something that seldom happens to me in the CWB, in the TSS systems. Usually the terrain is very clean appearing on the map. It's usually lines like this, not little spot hills that give you a defensive bonus. I'm not really sure what to say about that, except that it's a pain in the ass, but I don't think I'd like to see, big circles around the hexes or whatever, outlines of the hexes to show some kind of terrain leveling or something. Those are always hideous answers to the problem. Bigger hexes work, but obviously that's more expensive and a pain in the ass. So, I just take it as the troops are surprised to find they're wandering around in the dark as it is anyway right now. They're surprised to find that, the enemies in this terrain. I don't think that's very realistic, but then again, I don't have another answer. Got that retreats are 2 hexes and had to make up for some of that elsewhere. Because here we had a retreat, and you're not eliminated, you just take an extra step loss for retreating through enemy zones in this case. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of doing blow by blow here without dealing with the die rolls. I'm really finding these stacks to be an absolute pain in the ass. This is totally not a fun kind of game to play from my point of view. I really dislike having to cope with such big stacks clumped all over, in these kind of assaults like this. Oh, Jesus. I forgot what the victory conditions are. I have to count every damn step lost. You know what? I think I'm calling this one. I think I can't play this. I mean, I really do. I think there's just too much. It's an interesting situation. To me, though, it's about the equivalent of one of those magazine games. And it does it so much worse than so many of them. I may come back to this some other day. It's hot. I'm not thrilled with this game. There's not enough to this game to really excite me. It's this, like, tactical fight where there's just too many factors getting in the way of a modern combat that I'm less interested in than most kinds of combat. It's an interesting situation trying to extricate the Marines, etc., but it doesn't look that hard, and I'm just not having any damn fun with it. There are other things that I could do. I'm going to put this on the boiler in terms of taking yet another break. I'll put some dice here. If I can figure out a way to recount the status, I will. But, I'm just not seeing the worth of playing this thing. So with all the many factors of this game so far, I at least do have a solution to the counting the casualties. Now, I could reset the casualties now, but what I do not want to do, and why I wanted to just quit, is because I don't want to keep count of the casualties each one as it happens. There's too many step losses. But here's what I can do. At the end of the game, I can count all the casualties. Now, it doesn't quite work out that well. I do have to mark down casualties taken whenever I do a recuperation type event, when a unit recovers. But, in the end, victory points don't matter that much to me anyhow. You should be able to figure out what happens. Well, it's hard here because this is such an odd situation. Strategically, the Chinese are going to win no matter what. They're going to be able to force the Marines out. Tactically, it comes down to how much damage do they do. Can they really do enough to count it as a destruction? And my feeling is that the balance in the game has been designed in particular with the idea of, have you done better than the actual battle? And that's in fact listed here. But again, if this was an Ancients battle, I'd have no problem playing it out and saying, fuck it, I can't figure out the victory. It's a lot harder in a modern battle to do that for me because the interest isn't so much there. But all the same, I'm going to try to press on. And, when I do the recoveries, I'll have to keep a note of how many casualties I am taking. I think I'm probably not going to do the anal retentive version of the ammo supply. The game's got enough counting and crap like that going on in it, that much as I'd prefer to have that counting going on the logistical side of things, if I've got to do it with the goddamn counters and the combat factors and try to assess all my attack strengths, I don't want to do it with ammo as well. Alright, we'll continue on with our attacks. I think I stopped up here is the next one. I'm trying to figure out when I recover my troops, but I've continued on to not really any great effect. I think I took casualties here. Here I ended up taking some defensive terrain. And not a lot up there. Some damage to the U.S. forces, but mainly retreat results, which don't do much. Now, I can resupply. Well, nothing's out of supply. Disrupted and suppressed come back. I'm not sure when I recover troops. Because this is what I have to worry about. It's under wounded at the start of the first night turn of each day. So turn 5 for the CCF, and for the UN, what is it? Start of each day? At the start of the UN AM turn, so essentially, yes, the start of each day, we get some recovery. So we're not going to have to deal with that now. Now, I've got to be careful with the counting for that. So, for example, the UN, I removed 2 units from the field hospital of the same unit type and returned one of them to the map at the lowest step value. And what that lowest step value is hard to tell. The other units removed from play, so if I were to replace these two, which are the same, they would come in as this, and this would come out of play. This would still be countable as a casualty over in my dead pile, but this guy is a casualty that I'd have to record that has disappeared in terms of a step loss. Now for the CCF, they return a battalion for each they remove from the game. It must be placed with a remnant, and the remnant's removed. The battalion's placed with its full side up if the remnant was 2 steps, or reduced side if the remnant was only 1 step. So there too, I'm going to have to count casualties. If I'm removing one of these, I think those count as 2 casualties that are being discounted. And then any casualties the remnant took would also have to be discounted. And that should probably get me the values I need. Maybe. You know? If I have a calculation error in there, though, I'm going to come way off base, and who the hell knows. All right, well, that puts us to the American side of the turn, or the UN side of the turn. And they get to open things up with ranged fire. I'm not quite sure why they'd want to do that, because they can well, in order to avoid the defensive fire, they want to fire it. Because the thing is, if they don't do it now, they can always hold off and fire it as part of their assault phase, as long as they don't move the units or fire them. Anyway, I need a break again. It's going to take me days to get through, you know, the first turn, it looks like. But I mean, it took me most of today to get through the lighter side, the Chinese attacks. I'm looking at trying to cope with these piles in an offensive fashion as being a more complex problem. And this is a 30-turn game, 32-turn game. How likely am I to finish it? You know, I mean, I didn't think this thing was going to be a monster, but I can't face it at a higher rate of play than we're talking about. This isn't like... You know what it kind of reminds me of is it kind of reminds me of the Panzer Leader, Panzer Blitz games, maybe Squad Leader, done with way too many pieces. Okay, so the Union's launched its own fire phase, and I've used up almost all the fire counter, UN, not Union, almost all the fire counters in the game. Not all of them, to mark all their pre-fire. I didn't build any roadblocks or dig in or anything like that. I just, I wanted to open fire. The Chinese did not go to ground on any of these because they want their counterfire to count. Of course, you never know, you know, when you're exploring a new system, how well something like that's going to work. But I feel like they're on the offensive. They do not want to start cowering here. And cowering looks like a bad idea. You don't get to shoot back. I can't pull out yet. I've got to wait until, I think, after November 30th. I don't remember what the exact conditions, but I want both here and control of this area near the reservoir. So I've spread some of the forces out of Hangzhou to kind of protect my position across here. These guys are falling back. You can see they've moved quite a distance. I think they were here. 1, boink, boink, 2, 3. Remember, I get 2 free movement. Now, I could have probably done the operational movement. That would give me 6 movement points. I think that would actually have been a little quicker. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now it gets me to the same place. Also, these guys abandoning their post here on this hill and moving up, kind of shifting the forces away so that I don't have to undergo as much defensive fire, but I'm going to have to eat some of it. First of all, I launched a lot of offensive fire. That means I got to just stand there and take it now, which might not have been a great idea, but I can go to ground on all those defensive fire shots, and that works pretty well for me because then at least I get some reductions. I believe I can. I don't know. and that'll reduce my losses significantly in terms of any effect that the defensive fire can have. Okay, so as I'm firing defensive fire, a lot of the UN units are going to ground, so they get these suppressed markers. It's not going to hurt them at all. And the only thing it would stop is if they wanted to make an assault, which I don't particularly want to do in this at nighttime. But, hey, I finally noticed a pair of doubles. That means I'm going to get an ammo low marker on all kinds of units here. I guess these guys. I guess they each need one, because they might split up or something. And at some point I have to cope with that. But that's the first time I've noticed one. Now, I don't know how many die rolls for combat I've made, but it's probably been around 30 small arms fire, maybe less, maybe closer to 20, I'm not sure. But this is the first time I've actually noticed one. Probably not the first time I rolled one, but you give me some kind of stupid thing like that I gotta pay attention to in addition to looking up charts, it's gonna be really tough. It's much easier, and it would help if there was something in the chart that alerted me. Even though there's no number they could hit it for, if there was a reminder, that would perhaps keep my mind more focused on the dice. There's a lot of that kind of thing missing here, though. So, for example, the go to ground effects, they're not written here. So I have to turn to that page and find myself the going to ground rolls. And that means I'm no longer where I want it to be in the rolls, which was the sequence of play, because that also is not available. A lot of stuff missing that you're used to in modern games. But frankly, you go back to TSS, whatever, the rolls that you need, the modifiers, they were all there and available for you. You didn't have to go looking for them all over the place. And if anything, things have gotten better. By 95, you have the gamers providing a lot of charts and tables in their stuff. This just does not meet sort of the level, and GMT as well. This doesn't meet the level of, professional quality game of the era that it comes from. Very, very little effect so far from the Chinese fire, except they ran out of ammo again down here. They did get one step loss on a unit, except that the one big effect is I'm out of suppressed markers. So I gotta start stealing them to mark over here. I don't really need them. I'm just gonna declare I'm not making any offensive attacks. But you can see, the kind of thing that makes this more and more difficult, just all the different aspects of the game, not enough components, not a good enough chart selection, kind of an annoying design where you have all this firepower that you have to calculate. So I'm just chucking dice. I'm really not trying to strategize much at all in it, because the game is just too damn annoying. So skipping any more fire over here, none of it had any effect. Skipping any possible assaults by the UN forces, which I'm not going to make. I go to the resupply in whatever phase. Of course, for the UN side, it says just do the other side. When I looked up clear line of supply, I thought it was 5 hexes from a board, but no, if I can trace to a headquarters, I'm fine. So these and these, we're not low on ammo. These guys in the center here they got the unlucky roll. Most units aren't going to have a problem. Now, UN units do have diminishing ammo. And if I spread out my Chinese or lose my headquarters, I got some problems as well. But that's about it. I'm going to remove the disrupted markers. And then I'd remove any suppressed markers. And then everything gets its fired markers removed. Now the problem with that is I've got some units that didn't use fired markers, and I got no idea where they are. And they'll be flipped over and say they fired. And I've got, no real way to track those because of the decision to mix things. It's one thing if you have a few units that use a different type of system, in terms of needing a counter. If the vast majority are kind of the flip over type, but I find using this opposite mechanism doesn't work very well for me. So in particular, what I'm thinking about there is, say, routed markers, again in TSS. Most units flip over and they say routed, but with Cav, because they're special and needed the other side for something else, you actually had routed markers for them. But in this case, the vast majority have the fired markers, which are more apparent than a flipped counter. A flipped counter is kind of hard to see in one of these stacks. I know there's one in one of these. I'm not going to go pawing through it. It just ain't worth it. That's a lot of what I feel about this game. It just ain't worth it. You know, I'm chucking dice and shooting at things, and you could say, well, isn't that just what you do in most of the tactical games? And yeah, it is. But it's not as annoying to paw through the stacks and count up all the firepower values for me. Some of it may just be lack of interest in the subject matter. It's not that I'm uninterested in this particular battle by any means, and it's not that I'm terribly uninterested in the Korean War, but I'm finding it almost impossible to get excited about pawing through all these counters. Stacks just don't end up this big in most of the tactical games I like. Anyway, I'm going to do my end of turn cleanup, push this forward, call it a day now. I'll probably get another turn in later, but yeah, I really don't know how far I'm going to make it in this thing. There's just not a lot, you know. I'll tell you though, I'm getting the same feeling that I get when I play just Panzer Blitz, Panzer Leader, Panzer this, Panzer that, Squad Leader, all that shit, right? I'm just, you know, fiddling around with counters and rolling dice, and I don't care less about the story. And if I really, really cared, I would try to optimize, but none of it comes really natural. It comes so much more natural in the Ancients and the Civil War. And again, I don't know if that's just me not being all that thrilled with modern combat, or if it's actually this obnoxious factor of having to count factors on so many units in such a thing. It's not like I'm running down a continuous line. I've got these stupid big stacks. Alright, let's send this up. I'll do the cleanup while I'm sending it up.